If you feel spiritually exhausted, drained in a way that sleep doesn't fix, tired not in your body, but somewhere deeper, I want you to hear this carefully. This exhaustion didn't come from weakness, it didn't come from failure, and it didn't come from you doing something wrong. It came from carrying a weight you were never meant to carry for this long. A weight that most people don't even realize exists. I've lived long enough to recognize this kind of tiredness. It's not the tiredness of hard work. It's not the tiredness of responsibility. It's the kind of exhaustion that settles into your chest when the world feels loud, demanding, urgent, and somehow empty at the same time. When every headline feels heavy, when every conversation feels charged, when even hope feels like work. And here is the uncomfortable truth most people won't tell you. This exhaustion is not accidental. It is not random. And it is not simply how life is now. It is the predictable result of living inside a system that feeds on your attention, your emotion, and your sense of meaning. A system that doesn't need chains or force anymore, because it has learned something far more efficient. It has learned how to keep you emotionally activated, spiritually depleted, and permanently focused outward. I want you to stay with me for the next few minutes because what you're about to hear may quietly change how you see your exhaustion forever. And before we go any further, let me say this clearly. If you've ever felt like something here resonates, like someone is finally putting words to what you feel but couldn't explain, this channel exists for one reason only: to help you reclaim your inner sovereignty in a world that profits from keeping it fractured. Subscribing isn't about supporting me. It's about choosing clarity over noise. And if you already feel the weight lifting just a little as you listen, leave a like now. Not for the algorithm, but as a signal to yourself that you're ready to stop carrying what was never yours. When I was younger, exhaustion meant something simple. You worked, you rested, you recovered, the world moved slower. Problems had edges, causes had effects. Today, exhaustion feels different. It's ambient, it's constant. It follows you into your home, into your phone, into your quiet moments. Even when nothing is happening, it feels like something is about to. That feeling, that low-grade tension humming beneath daily life, that is not natural to the human nervous system. We were never designed to process global crises in real time. We were never designed to emotionally respond to every conflict, every outrage, every threat, every promise, every warning. Yet here we are, and this is where the spiritual exhaustion begins. Not because you care too much, but because you're being asked to care about too much, too often, with no meaningful resolution. Think about this for a moment. The system doesn't just inform you, it provokes you. It doesn't just show you events. It frames them in ways that demand emotional anticipation, anger, fear, hope, outrage, alignment, opposition. Every narrative pulls at you, asking you to take a position, choose a side, invest your identity. And when your identity becomes entangled with these narratives, something subtle happens. Your inner stillness erodes, your attention fragments, your energy leaks. This is not a failure of discipline. It is a structural design. Most people assume exhaustion comes from doing too much. In reality, spiritual exhaustion comes from reacting too much, from being constantly pulled into conflicts you cannot resolve, systems you cannot fix, and outcomes you cannot control. I've watched generations burn themselves out trying to change the world without first protecting their inner ground. And the system encourages this. Because a person who is constantly reacting is a person who is predictable. Here's a hard truth most won't say out loud. The system does not fear your anger. It does not fear your outrage. It does not fear your protests or your posts or your opinions. All of that is manageable. What it fears is your withdrawal of emotional energy, your detachment, your refusal to be internally hijacked. That's why everything is designed to feel urgent, because urgency bypasses discernment. Urgency collapses reflection. Urgency keeps you from asking the deeper question, why do I feel so tired after engaging with this? This is where many spiritually inclined people become the most vulnerable, because they care, because they feel deeply, because they sense that something is wrong beneath the surface. And instead of protecting that sensitivity, the system exploits it. Spiritual exhaustion is often the result of empathy without boundaries, of awareness without sovereignty, of consciousness without containment. And here's the part that may surprise you. The exhaustion you feel is not a sign you are losing your spiritual strength. It is a sign that your awareness has outgrown the environment you're immersed in. When a system is built on constant stimulation, division, and emotional extraction, anyone who begins to wake up will feel friction. The discomfort is not proof that you're broken. It's proof that something no longer fits. I remember a time when people believed freedom was external, political, structural, conditional, and while those things matter, they are not where freedom begins. True freedom begins when your inner state is no longer governed by external narratives. The modern system understands this. That's why it works so hard to keep you focused outward, always watching, always reacting, always identifying. Because the moment you turn inward with clarity, something changes. You begin to notice patterns, repetition, cycles, promises that never quite deliver, crises that morph but never resolve. You start to feel the exhaustion not as personal weakness, but as accumulated exposure. This is where many people blame themselves. Why can't I keep up? Why am I so tired? Why do I feel numb one moment and overwhelmed the next? Because no human nervous system was meant to live inside a permanent state of psychological mobilization. Let me tell you something I learned the hard way. Burnout is not always caused by effort. Sometimes it's caused by meaning overload. When everything is presented as existential, nothing can be integrated properly. The system thrives on this, not because it's evil in a theatrical sense, but because it is optimized for control, not coherence. And control requires fragmentation. A fragmented mind is easier to steer. A fragmented spirit is easier to exhaust. This is why political cycles feel endless, why hope rises and crashes, why outrage replaces outrage, why every critical moment is followed by another. It's not a flaw, it's a feature. And in the middle of all this, spiritually sensitive people feel like they're drowning. Because they can sense the manipulation, but they don't always know how to step out of it without disengaging from life entirely. Here's the quiet truth. Stepping back is not apathy. It's discernment. The most radical act in a system that feeds on reaction is the choice to remain internally still, to observe without absorbing, to witness without identifying. That doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop bleeding energy into systems that don't return meaning. Spiritual exhaustion lifts when you stop confusing awareness with obligation. You are allowed to see clearly without carrying everything emotionally. The system will never tell you this, because a person who learns to regulate their inner state becomes difficult to manipulate. Think about how often you're encouraged to feel something immediately. How rarely you're encouraged to pause. Silence is dangerous to systems built on momentum. This is why detachment is framed as indifference. Why inner sovereignty is framed as disengagement. Why calm is often portrayed as complicity. But calm is not compliance. Calm is clarity. When you reclaim your inner space, something remarkable happens. You start to see the difference between real responsibility and manufactured urgency, between genuine care and emotional extraction, between participation and entanglement, and slowly the exhaustion begins to ease, not because the world changes, but because your relationship to it does. I've watched people regain their strength not by doing more, but by doing less internally, by choosing where their attention goes, by refusing to let every narrative rent space in their nervous system. This is the beginning of spiritual independence. It doesn't happen loudly. There's no announcement, no applause, just a quiet shift. You stop reacting automatically. You stop identifying reflexively. You stop carrying conflicts that were never yours to resolve, and the system notices. Not consciously, structurally. Engagement drops. Predictability fades. This is why inner work is the most subversive act there is. If you feel exhausted, it means you've been paying attention in a world designed to overwhelm attention. It means you care in a system that monetizes care. It means your awareness is ahead of the structures surrounding you. That is not a flaw. That is a signal that it's time to stop fighting the current and start anchoring yourself. To stop trying to save narratives and start protecting your inner ground. To stop asking, how do I keep up? And start asking, what deserves my energy? Freedom does not begin with changing the system. It begins with changing what the system can extract from you. And this is where everything shifts. When you stop feeding the machine with constant emotional reaction, it loses its grip. When you stop outsourcing meaning to external conflicts, your inner world stabilizes. When you stop identifying with every crisis, your spirit begins to recover. This doesn't make you passive, it makes you precise. You act when it matters, you speak when it counts. You conserve energy for what actually builds something real. This is how spiritual exhaustion turns into quiet strength. I want you to remember this the next time you feel that familiar heaviness, that sense of being tired beyond words. It is not your failure. It is not your weakness. It is the cost of prolonged exposure to a system that was never designed to nourish the human spirit. And the moment you recognize that, you take the first step out of it. If something in this message resonated with you, I'd like you to do two things. First, leave a comment and simply write, "I see it now," not for me, for yourself, to mark the moment awareness clicked. Second, if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and leave a like. Not because you need more content, but because this space is built for people who are done being spiritually drained by systems that profit from exhaustion. You don't need to fight harder, you need to see clearer. And that's where real freedom begins.